When he ignores you, your heart clenches, your mind races with suppositions, and the silence screams louder than any words. What if this distance is a silent declaration of love? What seems like indifference may conceal a deep psychological struggle he doesn't comprehend. We will explore why a man in love may paradoxically withdraw and ignore you. We will delve into unconscious forces driving him, feminine projections he carries, and visceral fear of being engulfed by what he most desires. Carl Jung's analytical psychology guides us in understanding how love awakens light and shadow. If you've ever wondered why he is silent, prepare. The answers lie deeper within him and you than you might imagine. Jung's analytical psychology offers a powerful key to contradictory behavior, especially in romantic relationships. When a loving man distances or ignores you, it's not indifference, but a subconscious reaction to internal forces he cannot control. Jung speaks of projection, where we project parts of ourselves onto another we haven't acknowledged. When in love, a man projects his anima, the feminine archetype in his psyche, onto the woman. She embodies all he seeks, fears, and wants to integrate. This process can be overwhelming. He may retreat when facing his shadow, fears, traumas, and insecurities. True love activates individuation, requiring a confrontation with the unconscious and integration of both light and rejected aspects. Ignoring becomes a defense mechanism in this context, not because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much and doesn't know how to handle the transformation. Distance reflects a conflict between uniting with another and losing identity. Instead of interpreting silence as rejection, see it as a sign the relationship has touched profound layers. Integrating the anima in a man and the shadow in a woman are vital steps towards authentic, not idealized union. If he loves but ignores you, he may face the greatest challenge of his psychological path: to love without losing himself. Love, especially soul-stirring love, is not only joy and connection, but also an intense mirror reflecting our hidden parts. Jung warns us that everything in our unconscious eventually manifests externally, especially in our closest relationships. A man who truly loves may experience not only desires and dreams, but also deep wounds, traumas, and fears. This is his shadow. Jung said, the shadow represents everything repressed or rejected. These are impulses, emotions, and aspects of the self that do not fit the ideal self-image and are suppressed into the unconscious. When this man meets a woman who stirs real feelings, he unconsciously begins projecting both light and dark sides onto her. This is a natural process of the psyche, requiring maturity to understand and integrate. Instead of drawing closer, he often retreats. True love calls for surrender and deep transformation. It is as if his soul knew that to love fully, he would have to face all that he had avoided. The fear of losing himself in another, losing control, relinquishing defenses built over a lifetime, becomes stronger than the desire for connection. So, he distances himself. The impulse to ignore, isolate, or act coldly may be a subconscious attempt to preserve the fragmented identity he has built. When love activates the shadow, a man faces an internal chasm. He must choose between facing his wounds or clinging to the safety of the known. Many are not emotionally ready for this confrontation, so they choose to flee. In this context, silence, lack of contact, and seeming indifference do not reflect a lack of love. They indicate that the feeling has awakened something so profound that he does not yet know how to handle it. This movement, though painful for the receiver, is a call for each person to look inward and recognize what the connection reflects. For a woman who feels ignored, there is more pain, especially if she projects idealizations and unresolved needs onto him. However, understanding this process can change perception. When she realizes his withdrawal may result from an internal confrontation with his shadow, she stops personalizing the abandonment and begins seeing the psychological dynamics. It is important to remember that true love is a path of individuation, inviting both partners to become more authentic versions. If the connection is deep, it will inevitably awaken childhood wounds, inherited patterns, and survival defense mechanisms. This is necessary because there is no transformation without crisis. When he ignores you after showing love, he may struggle with the fear of losing himself, being betrayed, requiring more than he can offer. He does not fear the relationship itself, but what it awakens in him: the need for change, healing, and integrating his shadow. This is the beauty and pain of soul-touching love. It comes not only to unite, but to reveal. And we are not always ready to see what will be revealed. But by understanding the psychological nature of this behavior, you gain power. When a loving man distances or ignores you, it's not indifference, but a subconscious reaction to internal forces he cannot control. Jung speaks of projection, where we project parts of ourselves onto another we haven't acknowledged. When in love, a man projects his anima, the feminine archetype in his psyche, onto the woman, not to control another, but to choose how to position yourself in the face of pain, with awareness, compassion, and courage. Jung described the anima as the feminine archetype in a man's psyche, an internal image shaping his perception of women. This figure, formed from emotional experiences with female figures in childhood, especially the mother, represents more than idealization. When a man loves you and pulls away, he faces this projection. You become for him the embodiment of all that is mysterious, sensitive, and emotional, all that he was never encouraged to acknowledge or develop. A woman becomes a mirror to his fragile and repressed parts. He experiences attraction and threat. Contact with his inner feminine can be overwhelming for a masculinized ego. Control, reason, and emotional distance are signs of strength. The anima is not a romantic or idealized image. She carries emotional chaos, desire for fusion, intuition, and sensitivity. Without understanding, it causes confusion and fear. So the love he feels for you can activate this forgotten facet of the psyche and trigger an internal crisis. Looking at you, he sees not only you, but all that he desires, fears, and never knew. This projection can be charming. He puts you on a pedestal, sees you as unique, perfect, magical. But as coexistence reveals your humanity, the projection dissolves, and disappointment follows. Not because you changed, but because you were never what he projected onto you. What he loved was an internal image needing reintegration, not something to seek outside. When he realizes this, he experiences emotional collapse. The fantasy crumbles, bringing fear, discomfort, and withdrawal. The wounded masculine aspect has been disconnected from sensitivity. He had to swallow tears and learn that vulnerability is weakness, projecting the anima onto a woman. This man approaches the most sacred part of his psyche. Without emotional tools to cope, it is overwhelming, opening the door to a universe never explored. This universe screams. He feels small, lost, confused, and so flees. The pain of his departure is enormous for those left behind. But his pain is real, silent, hidden. It is the void of not knowing who he is, his feelings, or how to sustain a connection with something beyond logic. He loves you, but fears you, not for who you are, but what you represent. A call for transformation. Recognize that this dynamic is not your fault. You did not cause his crisis, but you can choose what to do with this awareness. Instead of trying to save him or convince him to return, allowing him the time to cope with his path may be powerful. Meanwhile, reflect on your projections. What did you expect? What role did he play? Love is not meeting bodies, it's reflecting souls. Understanding the anima allows us to see withdrawal as an internal crisis, a call for each to return, reintegrate lost parts, and one day meet again as human beings. When a man loves and ignores you, his actions may seem absurd. In Jungian analytical psychology, ignoring is not neglect or indifference. It is a psychic defense against what he cannot integrate. To understand, look deeper and acknowledge the subconscious mechanisms in the male psyche when facing a deep connection. True love transforms. It destroys internal structures built throughout life, often based on emotional suppression, rigid masculinity patterns, and fear of surrender and vulnerability. When a man is in a relationship requiring emotional presence, vulnerability, and authenticity, his internal system may resist. Ignoring is not an escape. It is a subconscious attempt to control an internal reality that is collapsing. Jung shows us that the unconscious is dynamic. When not integrated, it manifests through symptoms, contradictory attitudes, and defensive behaviors. Withdrawal, silence, and coldness manifest this internal conflict. He does not know how to express what he feels. For many men, emotional language has been silenced from a young age. When love knocks, bringing the need for connection, he withdraws. His defense is silence. His strategy is flight. This man has identified with the rational, strong hero archetype. Showing vulnerability threatens his identity. He fears dissolving, being captured by feelings he cannot name, and becoming dependent on what he cannot control. So he ignores you, even loving you. Emotional ignoring is fueled by the shadow, which Jung describes as the hidden side of the personality. It is a gateway to the integrity of the male psyche. However, when a man has yet to become aware of his anima, he projects it onto women in relationships, creating connections marked by illusions, expectations, and deep disappointments. All that has been rejected, condemned, or simply not accepted by the conscious. In moments of crisis, it unexpectedly manifests. The masculine shadow may contain abandonment, insecurities, suppressed anger, neediness, jealousy, and fragility. In some archetypal traditions, the hero must go through the desert, exile, or distancing before rediscovering himself. Withdrawal can be a subconscious movement inward, reorganizing his inner world to understand what is happening. But when this process remains subconscious, he cannot express it, and the woman only feels abandoned. Here, many relationships break down. The woman feels the pain of silence as a reflection of her inadequacy when she has been caught in a process belonging to him. Recognizing this, she can break the pain cycle. Instead of seeking answers or begging for attention, she turns inward and reflects on what this behavior awakens in her. The key is awareness. Jung said that everything unconscious manifests as destiny. If he does not know why he withdraws, ignores, and cannot sustain the love he feels, he will repeat this pattern in all his relationships. If the woman does not understand, she risks hurting herself trying to fix another. Ignoring is a cry from the unconscious, a request for time, space, and silence to rebuild. This is not easy for the one who feels, waits, or loves. Understanding this behavior as part of a deeper dynamic can turn pain into wisdom. Most importantly, it can allow love, even if not reciprocated, to serve as a mirror for both to grow. Facing the silence of a loving but withdrawing man, a woman often finds herself in an emotional vortex. Doubt, rejection, insecurity, anger, need. However, in this pain lies an invitation, a call to consciousness. Jung argued that every encounter is an opportunity for individuation, to become who you are by integrating your polarities. The silence of another can be a gateway to self-knowledge. An awakened woman does not choose to lose herself in pain, where she realizes his behavior is a reflection of a dynamic and not a measure of her value. She extracts the energy and redefines her center of power. True love starts from within. The other is a mirror, not the source of her wholeness. The silence is an opportunity for inner listening. Instead of asking why he ignores me, the woman asks what this absence is trying to show me. This shift is profound. Instead of seeking validation, she observes her vulnerabilities, attachment patterns, ideal love fantasies, and fear of abandonment. Doing so, she begins healing. She does not try to extract answers or chase someone who distances. She understands his silence speaks of an internal process he can resolve. She respects it as an act of self-love, not passivity. His withdrawal is needed for her to return, strengthen her identity, and rewrite her stories with more maturity. The awakened woman recognizes her shadow. She knows he projects his anima onto her, and she has projected a missing father, idealized savior, or partner to fill voids. By bringing these images into the light, she chooses more clearly. She is no longer a half. Transformation requires courage. It is easier to blame the other, call him immature or cowardly. It is harder to look within and acknowledge how the silence awakens old pains. It is in this confrontation that strength is born, a strength to embrace, observe, and transform. The awakened woman is receptive, but not passive. She is sensitive, but not vulnerable. She is deep and knows how to protect. She knows when to persist and when to let go. She knows true love is not clinging, but freeing. So, she expands. When a woman enters this state, she changes the dynamic. The man, in his conflicts, feels this shift and develops. It is not guaranteed and should not be her goal. The transformation happens when she stops living depending on his reaction and lives according to her truth. The woman knows she deserves a love that does not silence her, but she knows the process is slow and cannot accelerate it. Her role is to stay true, care for her soul, and grow. His silence becomes a teacher, not a punishment. It is a mirror. If this content touched you, subscribe and share. Leave "I deserve conscious love" and join the community seeking deeper, sincere relationships. Click the video on your screen to continue your journey.